Stereotypes are bad, right? We're not supposed to consign broad categories of people into these simplistic kinds of caricatures, and yet we do. We all do it because it's kind of mental shorthand for how to react and to deal with people. Some of us make a conscious effort not to give in to the temptation, but no matter how hard you try, you have to deal with that stereotype and consciously overcome it. So why do we do it, really? The sad truth is that a lot of the time it's perfectly valid to stereotype. Most blustering, red-faced religious conservatives are fairly interchangeable, at least on the surface. People dress, speak, and otherwise present themselves according to stereotypes in order to express some aspect of who they are and how they want to be treated. We run into problems, though, when the presentation and the intention don't match, but by and large, it's still true, which is why people still use them. The OED defines a stereotype as a widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing. That's perhaps a little uncharitable. Another way to view it, if you'll forgive me a little pretentiousness for a moment, is that of the Jungian archetype, which often sounds more like an eclectic tarot set than a psychological concept. Some of Jung's archetypes included the mother, the father, the trickster, the child, and also motifs such as the flood, creation, the apocalypse. In terms of stereotyping, what you have there are stereotypes and cliches. So, should we banish these stereotypes to the dustbin of history, or should we embrace them? Archetypes and motifs, stereotypes and cliches have too much power and usefulness to be completely and readily abandoned, though we may need to revise our lists somewhat. The Uncle Tom stereotype of the past is probably no longer appropriate unless you're writing historical fiction, but that doesn't mean that others don't retain their general usefulness. A good stereotype or cliche, if such a thing exists, is a weapon in a creative person's arsenal. Sure, it might seem lazy, but in short stories, games, and fiction with restricted amounts of text, dialogue, or screen time, such as comics, you often need to convey a lot of information in a very short space of time. Stereotypes are a sort of macro, like stealing someone else's piece of code and using it in your own programming to save time, or using stock footage in a film. The thug, the whore with the heart of gold, the dumb guard, the gravel-voiced vigilante, these all serve useful purposes, and whether you're charitable and call them archetypes or uncharitable and call them stereotypes, they convey a lot of information in one go with little effort on your part. This is even more useful when you're playing role-playing games, and the vast majority of people that the characters run into are unimportant. Without any personality, they're just a cipher. With a stereotype, at least they have a little bit of character and something that you can build on later in the game. The ruddy-faced innkeeper, the greedy shopkeeper, the Jobsworth guard, these can all be dropped in just about any game at a moment's notice, and they don't detract from it by being a stereotype. They add an element of character and personality where perhaps there wasn't any before. A stereotype doesn't have to end there, though. While it can be enough, it can also serve as a mere foundation. Consider pretty much every character in, say, The Simpsons. Every single one is a stereotype, from the motherly, disapproving Marge, who's no fun, to the oafish, irresponsible slob Homer, to the somewhat dodgy Asian stereotype of Apu. At least they all started out that way, and yet The Simpsons was from the get-go a great big success, once they were free of Tracy Ullman anyway. Why? Because everything was instantly recognisable and we all got it right from the get-go, because of the use of stereotypes. In 25 years, though, every character has developed some nuance, some background, even if continuity is just something that happens to other people in The Simpsons, and from those stereotypes have emerged more rounded comedic characters. The Fast Show was essentially a string of these, centred around mostly stereotypical characters, such as Rolly Birkin QC, who was based on a real person. These sorts of stock characters are not even remotely a new concept. The idea of the stock character, a formalised stereotype, goes all the way back to classical Greece, where in 319 BCE, Theophrastus, I think that's how you pronounce it, wrote extensively on character sketches and character as a genre, with 30 stock characters, including ones that are recognisable today, such as the talkative man, the coward, and the man of petty ambition. Later classical writers and playwrights added to this list, and the tradition survives to this day in comedy, much of it via the tradition of the musical. Returning to games, unless you're working very intensely with a set singular character and a set singular storyline, you're going to need to anticipate certain stereotypes and certain actions. This is even more so the case with computer games, which must anticipate and program for the actions of players, but also within tabletop role-playing games, where the three main archetypes are the magician, the rogue, and the fighter. You can see that in Numenera, replaced with Nano, Jack, and Glaive. You can see that in Cyberpunk with Netrunner, Fixer, and Solo. You can see it in almost any game, implicit or explicit, with character classes or without. They anticipate characters that slot into one of those broad archetypes. Every game starts with a baseline set of stereotypes, which you can then work with or against, exemplify, or contradict. And that's where the fun really comes in, where you fill out the details, where you defy the stereotype or subspecialize within it to create something new and individual. And that can happen over time as you grow more attached to the character and more versatile and powerful, learning new things about their background as you go along and creating a background through your adventures. In designing my game, Forever Summer, I went looking to the source material, kids' adventure movies and series, most especially the favourites I saw growing up like Goonies, and I saw the use of stereotypes there. Whether it's Stand By Me or Explorers, you largely know all you need to about the characters within the first half hour of the film, if not before. Stereotypes get most of that introductory mess out of the way, leaving the film free to get on with the story and the situation. More detail about the characters emerges as you go along, organically through the process of the story. It's kind of like character development, but not really, as you're revealing what's already there. Nobody said every single game, every single role-playing session, every book, every comic or magazine had to be completely stellar, break new ground, shatter the mold and do something new. To be groundbreaking. Nobody really said that you should avoid stereotypes. It's just some people have a bee in their bonnet about them. When these stereotypes exist in real life, it just seems ridiculous. There are people I know in real life who would be unacceptable characters in books or TV series because they seem like crass, offensive stereotypes, yet they're real people. Just don't worry about it. Stereotypes are just another tool in the toolbox, and if you muck about with them and keep revisiting them, they won't stay stereotypes for long. Peace.